Hi, everyone. Today, let's talk about the economic calendar. Then we'll talk about the options expiration for tomorrow. Then we'll take a look at the charts. Then we'll look at my results for the day and my thoughts going into tomorrow's session. If you like trading stocks and options and making money, definitely like and subscribe. I make videos like this every single day that the market is open as well as Sundays, so make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Welcome to the Portfolio Bulletin. Let's get started. So looking at the economic calendar for tomorrow, we do have PCE data, which is obviously one of the biggest things that the Fed looks at for inflation. And then we got a bunch of Fed governors talking in the afternoon. So pretty big day, actually. Consumer spending, interesting to see. Personal income, always interesting to see. But really, the big news is going to be PCE, consumer sentiment, kind of interesting. And then all of these Fed governors coming out in the afternoon and most likely commenting on the PCE data and potentially giving us some opinions on what they think the Fed is going to do at the next meeting in March. Moving over to the options for tomorrow, you can see 1.3 million options, put-call ratio 1.7, so fairly bullish going into tomorrow as a contrarian bet against the put-call ratio being fairly high. Not as high as it was going into the week, but definitely pretty high, still at 1.7. Max pain sitting at 402, which is basically where the SPY is right now, sitting at 401.50. And you can see all these put options, 395, 400. Wouldn't expect those guys to make money, so I would expect to finish above 400 at the close. 403, that's a little bit more questionable. There's definitely some calls in here. You can see max pain sitting at 402, but really 410 I would say is an absolute cap, no higher than that. 405 is probably more realistic. Somewhere between 400 and 405 makes the most sense to me, just based on the options, and you can see what that looks like in terms of options in the market. A whole bunch of calls here at 400, similarly a whole bunch of puts, and just slightly to the upside here you have 401, not a bad spot, but really 402 is going to be that max pain, and realistically just north of 402 would make the most sense to me. Make sure all these puts lose money, and you can see what that looks like on the actual money chart. Actually looks fairly even, but you can see 403, 404 fairly even in terms of money, and then all the way down to 399, 400 fairly even in terms of money. So anywhere in that zone makes sense for the SPY, and it should be relatively limited movement tomorrow based on this. Moving over to the charts, starting with the S&P 500, this is actually fairly tough here. So 4-hour momentum looking very bullish, looking to flip bullish tomorrow, stepping pretty high up on RSI. Even the daily chart looks fairly strong with a bunch of wicks here at that 398 to 400 level. Momentum is to the downside though, which indicates to me that we're probably going to see another update tomorrow, maybe starting to fill some of these gaps, hit gap resistance, and then start to see a decline into tomorrow. Maybe the PCE data pushes us up all the way to 406 to fill the gaps, fade into the afternoon to get back closer to that max pain around 403, 402, somewhere in that zone to close out the day, and make sure that Wall Street and the market makers make as much money as possible. That's what I would be anticipating here, but overall looks like it's going to be bullish into tomorrow's session, and that's really what you have to be banking on, especially after the 3 days of holding this price level that we've seen, tagging the 200 SMA on the 4-hour chart, getting a very strong push to the upside, taking out all these lows. Just looks bullish, and you can see big wick here, probably more upside to come. And this trend line continues to hold, even though it's not the trend line. Even though it's not the trend line that I prefer, it does seem to be holding here, and it's a level that you have to respect in tomorrow's session. Moving over to the NASDAQ here, you can see we had two zones that I was watching here. This previous low, which ended up being support. Again, that's the third time we've come into this zone and found some support. Did gap above this previous high and then went straight through the zone, and then rallied through it, throwing a wick up to that trend resistance, and then we're holding pretty much here at support. It wouldn't surprise me if we did come down a little bit here, maybe down to 295.50, find some support at the EMAs here on the 1-hour chart and move higher. Otherwise, momentum on the hourly strong, RSI above the 50 line. Looking at the 4-hour though, you can see momentum looking to turn green here early in the session tomorrow. RSI still below the 50 line. It is above the SMA, so you would expect it to go higher here. And if we do get a nice push, you could definitely see this taking out the previous highs, going all the way up to maybe 299 or 300. We do have stronger resistance at 341 cents. Or up here at 299.50, these previous trend lines up here, definitely within striking distance for tomorrow's session. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow on the daily charts. Once again, respecting this 189 level here on the Russell, continuing to stay above that level, strong level of support. You also have 3 wicks down here at 186, 187, all very strong wicks to the downside, indicating potential bounce here into tomorrow. That's what I'm looking for. Once again, RSI sitting at 50 level, probably going to break that tomorrow on the Russell. Dow, similar, very strong wick to the downside, took out this previous low by quite a lot. And to me, indicating that this is going to move higher tomorrow, probably to retest support. Maybe not all tomorrow, but realistically looking at a 335 level on the Dow before you should be shorting again. Overall, probably still going to turn bearish, but 335 is about 1.5% to the upside, and you do have to respect that here on the Dow. Both of them look bullish. Obviously, daily momentum is weak, but if you move over to the 4-hour charts, similar to the other major indices, they are reflecting bullish price action going into tomorrow's session. Moving over to Apple and Tesla. Apple continuing to struggle with this trend line. We've been watching that for a while here now. And it just can't seem to get above it. Tested it early in the session, closed below it. Tested it once again here in the midday and still closed below it. If this is going to rally tomorrow, you would like to see it get above that level and probably get into the 152s. That's what I would be looking for. You can see a clear double bottom at this 148 level, looks very strong. And once again here, momentum on both of these ticking to the upside on the 4-hour chart. Fairly weak momentum, but might turn positive tomorrow or Monday. So keep that in mind. Realistically here, looking at Tesla, still stuck between these two major trend lines. 193.50 continues to be strong support. 214 continues to be strong resistance. Didn't get to either of those points today, but in terms of today's price action, this looks like a solid bottom here at 196.84, which is pretty much same as the lows here yesterday and the day before, indicating that this could be moving to the upside, probably retest that with 214 level. Once again, maybe not all tomorrow, but probably the day after, if not tomorrow. Moving over here to Google and Amazon. Just to hit the major stocks, I do want to highlight that Google is continuing to be pretty weak here, but momentum is fading to the downside. Certainly could see a push back up into this 93, 94 area. That's this previous low and an area of resistance that we've seen before. That would also be a retest of the 21 EMA here on the 4-hour. Overall looks slightly bullish despite the weaker day compared to the major indices. We're also at longer term support here. So you have the previous highs from early in January and the lows here from mid-January. We do get a nice little bounce from there. Like I said, 93, 94 would be what I'm looking for. Moving over to Amazon. Amazon actually looks quite a bit stronger than I've seen here recently. So we did get that bigger sell-off from the previous high. This was a ridiculously high island reversal, gapped all the way up to like 113 and then right back down to 103. So very big reversal here. And you can see we're at that 55 EMA here on the daily chart. Did get a step down in bearish momentum here on the daily chart and a nice wick reversal looking pattern here on the candles. Got that bearish day, got the engulf, kind of a weak engulf here, but still an engulf, and then big wick to the downside and another green candle, indicating that this is potentially going to go higher. That would be interesting to see here with retail going a little bit higher. That should push discretionaries up as well. So Amazon showing a little bit of strength, which is good to see. Moving over to consumer staples and consumer discretionary, not much to add here today. Staples continues to stay flat. Momentum is basically zero here on the 4-hour. Discretionary, though, looking slightly bullish. Does look like a reversal legs type pattern, similar to the other charts. Did get resistance here on the 4-hour 9 EMA. Overall, RSI did move higher, and if we do gap through this level and we get back up to maybe 149, that wouldn't be too surprising. I don't think we'll get all the way up to retest this trend line before we see a reversal in markets, but I could definitely see 148, 149 as a potential area for resistance tomorrow. That also coincides with the lows here on this kind of double topping pattern that we had. I went ahead and drew that zone in there, covering these previous lows and previous highs here. Definitely a zone of supply. Once again, kind of up to that 150 level, but really starting at 147, 147.50 or so. So about $2 of potential price action to the upside. That's what I would be looking for here on discretionary. And if Staples stays flat and discretionary goes higher, you should expect the overall markets to be bullish as well. Moving over to AMD and NVIDIA here. AMD throwing some wicks to the upside, got into this previous high here and got rejection. This is a very strong rejection candle, just like the other charts here, but we did actually engulf that right in the next candle on the 4-hour chart. If this is going to move higher, you would want it to happen now, especially with this big rejection candle that we had here previously. If we do see a nice rally, you would expect it to get rejected at the same level, at the 81 level, based on this big rejection that we had on the previous candle. AMD still looking fairly weak. Slight bullish momentum here on the 4-hour, stuck at the 50 on RSI. Like I said, maybe $1 or $2 of upside, and then we get rejection once again based on this wick. If you're going to trade this to the bull side, just be cautious. Certainly could go a little bit higher here, but this candle right here makes me a little bit nervous trading AMD to the upside. Otherwise, moving over to NVIDIA, as you expected, big green up day, went higher throughout the session here. Got pretty much to where we thought it would, retesting resistance. If this does get above resistance here tomorrow, this might be an interesting play. But right now, you have to expect that these longer-term trends are going to hold. We did get a big move higher based on earnings, but definitely longer-term resistance and overall economy is going to affect NVIDIA here. But like I said, if we do get an update in the major indices, that could certainly push NVIDIA higher. We are overbought here on the 4-hour chart, which tends to be a pretty good indicator that we're at least going to see a short-term reversal or at least a slowdown in momentum to the upside. But right now, MACD pointing higher, just kind of mixed signals here on NVIDIA. Moving over to yields, 2-year yield, basically flat, throwing wicks to both directions, waiting on PCE data for tomorrow. Looking at the 10-year, similar, double topped here, looking weak. Looked like we closed just below that midpoint here on this kind of double topping pattern. Also slightly lower than the previous high, so this is a low and a lower low now. Certainly this could change tomorrow based on PCE data, but you do have to respect the charts. This does look weak. Momentum here is to the downside on the 4-hour. We're stuck at the 50 level here on RSI, so that could certainly be an area to bounce. Similar to what we had here, we came close to the 50 and got a nice little bounce into overbought conditions once again. It is worth noting that there's a little bit of divergence here from the 16th, 17th high to this most recent high. We did get a lower read on RSI, but a higher price action. So potentially some weakness here in the 10-year yield going into the PCE report tomorrow. Moving over to the dollar here on the 15 and the 1-hour. I do want to highlight these smaller time frames here because this is still moving higher fairly consistently, making new highs. This most recent low was lower than the previous high, so that is interesting. Same with the last one. So we came down, tested 55, made a higher high on the 15-minute chart. Really, this is going higher, but man, it is choppy, that's for sure. It looks kind of weak, but you can't quite get around the fact that it is still making higher highs. The 21 on the hourly chart continues to be pretty strong support. And it looks like we're going to be moving higher here at the end of the session. Pretty interesting. We had a big down move in the middle of the day, allowing for that bullish price action. If this goes higher, that might make it tougher on stocks to go higher. But realistically, this could move higher overnight, make a new high, and then sell off, allowing for equities to go higher during the day. Looking at this on the longer time frames, you can see the 4-hour is losing momentum. We did have a big wick on the 4-hour, and you can see what that weakness in this trend looks like on the longer time frames. Almost a doji here on the daily chart, definitely at strong resistance. This is grinding higher and it seems like it could flip at any point, but right now you do have to respect it to the upside at least a little bit. Moving over to JNK, lots of strength here in JNK. We talked about this potentially going higher and retesting the 55. We did get that retest here today. Found some support at the previous day's high and then rallied all the way up to 91.65. Very strong day. We're at a key level here. If we are going to get the candle break and continue, we're at a perfect spot to do that. Momentum on the 4-hour is strong. Well below the zero line here on the EMAs, getting the cross. You would expect this to go higher based on what we're seeing. Very strong bullish price action, not overbought here on either of these time frames. You're at the 50 on the 4-hour, so you'd want to see that cross to see if we're going to continue. But right now, JNK is telling us that we are going to go higher tomorrow, and you do have to respect that. Moving over to TLT, once again, testing the 102.50 level, getting rejection. Pretty interesting. That also coincides with the 9 EMA here on the daily chart. Daily momentum picking up to the bullish side. We're at the SMA here on RSI. Want to see that cross tomorrow if we're going to go higher. Momentum here on the 4-hour still bullish. Did get a little bit of rejection here at the 50 level on RSI, so maybe we see a little bit of a pullback to 101.50, this previous high here, find a little bit of support, and then retest the 102 and go to 103.50. That would be interesting, definitely a little bit better for traders. Get a slight pullback, better entry, risking at this previous 101, 101.50 level, and then looking for that move up to 103.50, which would be the previous lows from this earlier consolidation area. Otherwise, you do have to respect the fact that 102.50 could be an area of stronger rejection. If this does break the 101.50 level, then you're looking for a retest of the previous low at 100, 130, somewhere in that area. But like I said, still looks bullish going into tomorrow. Finishing up here with the charts on the VIX, you can see on the 4-hour and the daily chart, we're at an area of potential support. Came into that zone that we talked about yesterday, right at the 200 SMA, right in that 2050 level. We didn't get all the way down, and we didn't test the 144 EMA here down at 2020, indicating that this is probably not done. I would guess that we're probably going to break this steeper trend line, find some support a little bit lower. That would be what I'm looking for here. Certainly could bounce off of this trend line and get back into the 2250 level. That would obviously be bearish for equities. But right now, this looks like a top and a move down. Maybe we look for a double top here in the shorter term, but right now I would expect this to come into that 2020, 2030 level, and then we find some support and push back higher, looking for that previous high at 2330, 2350. Moving over to my accounts, you can see I continue to struggle here. I knew I was going to have a tough day based on the rally that we were seeing on NVIDIA at the end of day yesterday. And that came to fruition, ended up being a slight loser here for me today, about 0.5%. Not what you want to see, certainly. I think I'm going to look at committing here more to a full practice of the wheel strategy on my accounts. I do like the wheel strategy. It did struggle last year because we had so much downward movement. At this point, it seems like the better strategy compared to what I've been doing, and I might use futures to start trading in and out of markets instead of trying to move around these equity positions. But really, to get that started here, looking at 2 puts at 295 for tomorrow. I did have those on throughout the day and decided to put them back on here at the end of day, especially with the little bit of a move down that we had at the end of the session. Looking to get back into the markets at 294 with that dollar credit. And then we have 188 here on the IWM, 50-cent credit, so 187.50, giving me about $2 of protection here on the IWM and about 1% of protection here on the Qs. Let me know down in the comments section what you think of the wheel strategy or what you think the market is going to do based on the PCE data tomorrow. Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.